to begin today's podcast, we're going to be talking about gifted education and the identification of gifted students. And so I want to give you some information about how Ohio defines a gifted student. So Ohio defines a student who is gifted as one who performs or shows potential for performing at remarkably high levels of accomplishment when compared to others of their age, experience, or environment. Now, the public school districts are required to identify students in grades K through 12 for gifted identification in the following areas: supreme cognitive ability, specific academic ability like in math, reading, writing, science, or social studies, in creative thinking ability, and visual or performing arts ability like dance, drama, music, or visual arts. And this is all defined by the state of Ohio.
Welcome to STEAM State of Mind, your favorite source for all things STEAM education.
STEAM State of Mind.
This isn't just science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. It's a state of mind, a different way to approach education in the classroom.
STEAM State of Mind.
Enjoy these conversations with educators, students, and community members as we explore what it means to be in a STEAM state of mind.
STEAM State of Mind.
Hey there, it's Kari coming to you from Kettering, Ohio.
And this is Bern. I'm really excited about today's podcast because we have a special guest.
Why don't you introduce our guest?
So our guest today is Lynn Canarosi, and she is our
elementary gifted coordinator
for Kettering.
And I'm also the gifted intervention specialist at Greenmont.
Okay. So Lynn, we're excited to have you today because something that we talked about in earlier podcasts and some of the questions that we've had is that how STEAM education is for everyone. It is not just for the gifted kids. It's not just for the average, I guess you can call them kids, and or the intervention kids. It's for everyone, and it meets the needs of all kids. And so,
amen to that.
Okay, we're on agreement. That's good.
Right.
We're off to a good start.
It is good when we agree.
Yes.
In the first 30 seconds.
So now, first of all, let's just, tell us a little bit about yourself. And then can you tell us how the elementary gifted program is set up in Kettering?
All right. Well, the gifted services in elementary are provided primarily through the classroom teachers with supports from GISs or gifted intervention specialists at each building. We have a GIS half-time at each of the buildings, so they travel around a lot. We've been doing professional development with the teachers, focusing on 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classroom teachers to help with the gifted portion of services. And the GISs go into classrooms, co-teach. They also provide support, and sometimes we are able to have students come out in a small group, depending upon what meets the needs of the students, the teachers, and the building.
Yeah, and so everybody is at different places. Like we talked about our kitchen, the analogy. How do you feel teachers are adapting to this new, I don't know if you call it new anymore, but that, they're the primary
deliverer of
for
gifted services.
Yes.
Yes. I think we are very blessed and lucky in Kettering because our teaching staff, our support staff is amazing, and they understand that everything is constantly changing. And I think even with gifted services fits right into the engineering process as well. We go through it, and what works we keep, what doesn't work we alter and change and try to make it better for everyone.
That's great. So it's not like it's not static. You are constantly looking at what's working for kids.
Yes.
In the classroom.
Yes.
And I think that's great. And I would imagine that sort of integrating this into the classroom and gifted into the classroom has probably strengthened our gifted services versus maybe the way we did it before. And that's a big change that came about because you realized that maybe that's a better way of doing it.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. We're we're all living and learning and trying to be better. And the same thing goes with the gifted department.
Absolutely.
And we found that in the classroom, a lot of whenever we're co-teaching, the means, the activities we're doing, or the way we're teaching can be applied to everybody. The depth of it might be different, but
We have talked about myths and misconceptions in an earlier podcast about STEAM education, but there are a lot of myths and misconceptions that occur with gifted students. And the author of this particular article that I am going to share a piece of is from Todd Stanley. And one of the misconceptions that he points out is that sometimes people like to say that all children are gifted. And what he said, what his response to that is he writes that there are some who are opponents to giftedness because what it means to them is by saying these children are gifted is that other children are not gifted. It is making a child feel as though he is not special, and we do not want anyone to feel that way in our land of equity. So let us not forget that being identified as gifted is not for the purpose of social status. It is not a pat on the back or on the shoulder. It is not a reward. The purpose for the identification of gifted children is it allows school districts to determine what services would be best for those children. Just as if a child were to be identified as learning disabled, the district would have to do the same for gifted.
STEAM is a wonderful example. 6 thinking hats. We've been able to, it applies for everybody. I've done Hour of Code, and some of the most successful students in the Hour of Code program that I've done over the past 5 years have been the students who are doing the engineering process, who are going through, and if it doesn't work, they realize it's okay, I'm just going to try something new.
I wanted to step in before we get into the whole STEAM and gifted. Is it a misconception to sort of block a gifted child by just saying, oh, they're just the smart ones? So there's so much more to gifted education than just that these are the smart kids. Talk about that a little bit, because I think it's really interesting. In my classroom, I don't even like to use the word smart. I kind of, I would say I'm trying to get them to say I'm a problem solver. I'm a critical thinker. Nice. It's, when you refer to smart, it kind of refers to that fixed mindset of that this is all I am. This is my one claim to fame. Well, first of all, we're all living and learning. And I will tell the students that, I make mistakes and it's okay. What the important part is, what do you do after you make a mistake? Are you fixing it? Are you making it better the next time? Are you learning from it? Then mistakes are amazing and they're awesome and they're needed.
We've talked about the growth mindset on another podcast and talked about the growth mindset compared to the fixed mindset and how the growth mindset is constantly evolving and changing based on a lot of the mistakes and failures that we've made.
Yes, and I think we're ready to take that fixed mindset and that growth mindset, working on that growth mindset, but taking the growth mindset a step further and incorporating the grit that's involved with it, incorporating the efficacy that's involved with it, and really taking it that next step.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So basically, when you're talking about a lot of the things that you have just talked about are things that we've talked about in previous podcasts. And so really, how do you see STEAM education and the gifted program that you're a part of, that you're actually the lead of? It's a team effort. I know your mind.
It's a team. It's all a team.
Yes. And so, but how do you see STEAM education and gifted, how are they integrated? How do you see them connected?
It is definitely entwined. It's gifted students tend to be thought of as being quirky, but all students have their own uniqueness about them. And one of the things that we're working on is the perfectionism. A lot of students think that because they are labeled as being the smart kid, that they can never make a mistake. And if you never try, then you're not going to be making that mistake. But then you're not living, you're not experiencing, and you're not growing. So I think if we can get STEAM involved, and it does a nice job of just with that whole engineering process of getting your facts, figuring out what is the problem, how am I going to solve this, what are different ways that I can solve this problem, that using if they've done the green hat, the creative thinking, the problem solving, and finding different ways and then trying them. It's not that you have failed, it's you found a way that doesn't work, so I'm going to try something else. It's, as Mr. Schwieterman has said many, many times, it's the power of yet. I don't have it yet.
That's right. That. And so, I just said I collaborate with, a lot of the teachers and teams and stuff like that. And one thing that is really great is when I'm able to, when the GIS is able to join this collaboration. And we were collaborating with one of your GIS teachers with the fourth grade team, and we were talking about some of the challenges that one of the teachers was experiencing with her gifted students, that they don't want to fail. And she was explaining to us how that failure, they associate failure with intelligence. And that if they fail, they then think that other people will think they're not intelligent. And so in order to avoid failure, they avoid the task at hand. They avoid, because if they're not 100% certain, some of the gifted kids, or identified gifted kids will not participate because they don't want to fail. So how do you think the STEAM mindset, the state of mind of STEAM education and the gifted mindset, how do you think that can help?
I think it's not only just gifted students. I think it's an issue with all students, whether it's pressure from home or their own self-pressure of always, being the best or, just making those mistakes. I'm a big fan of the Magic School Bus. I think I have all of them. I have the DVD collection, I must admit. And, just with that, Miss Frizzle would say, take chances, make mistakes. And even today when I was having class and I'm like, and it didn't work out perfectly the first time. And I'm like, hey, it's all right. Let's try something else. And we talked about what their thoughts were, and we talked about how let's try something different. Let's not do the same thing. Let's try something different. Is the world going to come to the end? Is the sun going to stop shining? And those things. And they're like, no. And then I'm like, all right, there we go. So let's keep going. Let's try something new.
And so do you think that teachers are understanding that problem that students are having, that it's not a defiant issue, but it's kind of more of a mindset issue? Do you think that
or it's large self-preservation?
Yes.
I think it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Do you guys think, and we've talked about standardized testing a lot, and we have been very clear that we have no problem with accountability, but do you guys think that the kind of the importance that's been placed on standardized testing comes into play? Because you said this need to, not fail is across the board. It may be a little more striking amongst our gifted kids, but it's across the board. So do kids, when there's so much placed on getting the right answer, do you think that comes into play with that sort of mindset of having to get everything perfect and not fail at something? Do you think that comes into play?
I would say yes, definitely. And I think it goes into, because we are the third grade guarantee. It's
this week.
Yes, it is. So yes, definitely.
Yeah. And so, and the, sometimes I believe that the pressure is not just with the students, and what Lynn said earlier. It's the pressure is on the outside too, of all of the, oh my God, it's the test, and oh my
Right.
goodness, you have to do well, and if you don't do well in this test, like I had a third grader just 2 days ago. I was at a school, and because I couldn't go into their classroom because they were testing, and they said, well, I hope I pass the test because I want to go to fourth grade.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, you will, no, this test has nothing to do with you're going to pass or fail. But in her mind, she was so worried that she wasn't going to be able to, because it's called the third grade guarantee. And they think that, oh my gosh, if I don't do extremely well on this, that they're not going to go into fourth grade. So I think that there's a lot of pressure that we don't realize, that we, as a society and as educators or whatever, that we put on the students, that we don't realize how much the students are internalizing all of that,
Well, and along those same lines, I will share that my daughter, when she was a junior, was convinced that she needed to, because people were saying, oh, what college do you want to go to? What do you want to study? What do you want to be? And she was feeling a lot of the pressure of determining, what she was going to be at 16, 17 years old. And I told her, I'm like, sweetheart, I have changed my career path. I changed my major a couple of times. And then whenever I got out, I did that for a few years. And then I went back to school. And I've been in education for 22 years, but I've been at 7 different buildings.
Right.
I've been at, various grade levels, 3 through 6. And it's okay if you find something that's not working. Try something else.
It's also okay at 16 and 17 not to know,
Yes.
that old
yes.
what you want to be when you grow up.
But I still remember her saying, Mom, you don't understand. And I'm like, what don't I understand? And so even they're feeling it there, in high school, that I need to determine. And so I was like, I should have, made sure that we realize it's okay. It's all right to experiment and to try.
And you're
move
bringing
on.
up a good topic with the career aspect of things, where, the gifted, we have, like you said earlier, smart. You don't like to use the word smart, it's problem solving and stuff like that. And so we always kind of associate gifted with an IQ score or something like that. There's a kind of a misconception about different things. And think about the art world and the people who are gifted in the arts, or people who are gifted in being able to visualize things in the engineering and being able to put things different ways. And so, how do you identify all these different types of gifted, or how, do we meet the needs of all of those?
We try.
Well, I know. Yes. I know you guys do.
We're trying. It's in Kettering, in elementary, we identify for superior cognitive, for reading, math, and creative thinking. And then in middle school, we add science and social studies to that. It does not encompass everything. And, let's face it, not everybody's a good test taker. And there's more to it than that. One of the things that we focus on is meeting the needs of the students. A lot of times gifted students will pick up on things quickly. They don't need to have all of the repetition, and a lot of times they can process it and apply it quicker. And it's just a matter of like we're all trying to do. We're trying to meet the needs of all the students.
And there is a social and emotional aspect of it too.
Yes, there is, definitely.
Because I when I was a 5th grade teacher, I remember a parent saying to me, when we used to do the complete pullout, that the only time that her son truly felt comfortable expressing his giftedness was when he was with all the other gifted kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
so there's definitely a place. And I can, I've had students that have said, that, well, when I'm in the regular classroom, it was a girl, and she said, how come I'm the only girl who's raising my hand in the regular classroom? Which is an issue too, because that reinforces the, that boys are smarter than girls. Well, they're not,
Oh, yeah.
So that's a whole nother one.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes. Whole another issue.
Yes.
Well, and sometimes girls feel they have to live up to that in some ways when, they might know the answer, but I don't want to be the only girl raising my hand, because it is hard when you're, those ages to be different or to be, to put yourself out there is really what you're doing.
Taking a risk.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what I really love about STEAM education too, is that, as they're problem solving through things and doing this collaborative work together and communicating and stuff like that, that it allows, students to be able to communicate and speak up and, share their ideas and thoughts to solve problems, that their input is, and it just doesn't come from one person. You're not raising your hand, while they're working on these different things.
It is working on that thought process. What are you thinking? How do you think? What's a different way? What's, what's going through? And it's hard for students, gifted or not, to identify what they are thinking or how they are getting to the answer. A lot of times I encourage students, if they're like, well, did I get it right? And I'm like, how did you get it? And they're like, I want to know if I got it right. I'm like, I want to know how you got it.
Yeah.
The process.
The process
to get
the process of how you're getting there.
Well, and I, as the non-educator here, sitting here watching this, it's almost like, it sounds like you should be the gifted / STEAM assistant / coordinator, because, well, it just seems like that STEAM is a super integral part of what you're trying to do with our students who are identified as gifted.
Yeah, and it, once again, it's that state of mind.
Right.
And STEAM benefits all students. I really believe it's, it's that communication, it's the problem solving, it's the, all right, that didn't work, let me try something else.
Well, and it all fits absolutely into, we're doing our whole Portrait of a Graduate campaign right now. And those are the things that we're trying to impart upon our students. What we want them to possess when they graduate from Fairmont High School are those, the collaboration and the communication and the problem solving and, all of those things
Critical
that
thinker.
are just are a part of STEAM. So it absolutely needs to be a state of mind for us, because that's where we want kids to be when we say goodbye to them and they graduate.
Right. And that's why I truly believe we really need to start in the elementary and different things, because that mindset needs to, start at a very young age.
Right.
And so when they go through their career, they have that
foundation.
That foundation and that mindset of it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to, go through critical thinking to solve a problem. And if I don't get it right the first time, there's a process of how I can go back and redesign and do things. And I know that with the gifted program or, gifted students and everything like that, all teachers. That's what we want all teachers to be able to do.
And it's not limited to elementary either. I mean, the message needs to be done in middle school and in high school, that, even though they are doing these high stakes tests, that it's okay to make mistakes. It's all right to, to learn from them, to move on. And I think sometimes in middle and high school, that message gets lost because of all the other things that are going on.
Absolutely.
So right now, what do you think is the biggest challenge for the gifted segment of our schools? This is a big question.
That
I
is a
know, and I kind of
huge-
surprised you with
You
that.
did.
Yes.
You
So
did
what do you
surprise
what do you
me.
think is the biggest challenge?
I think the biggest challenge is the perception of giftedness. Whether it's the student or the teacher, there's no elitism about it. There's still students. We're still teachers. We are working towards that common goal, and it's a process.
Yeah, I found that when I was in the classroom, and still today, that the needs of a gifted are the same, but at different levels or different things as
Yes.
the other end of the spectrum. And sometimes it's like, okay, they're smart. They don't need my help. They don't need this. They don't need that, or whatever. They can do it, or whatever.
We
But
wouldn't have
they
gifted
do.
intervention specialists if that were true.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Lynn, thank you for coming in, and
Thank you
we
for
really
having me.
appreciate it. Yes.
One more thing I wanted to say before we finish.
Okay.
And this is because my daughter graduated from Kettering schools and a long time ago, and I've been here a long time. You guys have been here a long time. One thing I think a challenge with gifted and STEAM, I think, is a couple things is time,
Yeah.
and the need to always differentiate. And you were talking about how many different types of labels there are per se for a gifted child, and for us to be able to meet all of those needs has to be kind of a challenge. But what's so neat is to hear that you are constantly looking at ways, new and different ways to meet those needs and to support those students, and to make sure that they are growing and achieving at the highest level possible.
We're doing our best to support the students and the teachers so that
And
we
it's
can all
just-
grow.
It's neat to see that we're always willing to observe and see what we're doing and what's working and what's not, and that we're willing to change when it's necessary. I think that's awesome. I think that's why we have such a great school district.
we
That's right.
do have an awesome school district.
All right, Coach Schwieterman.
Okay.
We have a question from Galen, and this is interesting, and I cannot wait to hear your answer to this. How is STEAM integrating the arts into just the general ed classroom?
So the A in
The A in STEAM.
arts. Yep. And that includes, I consider language arts too with that. But, it is the arts. And I know Galen. Galen is actually a former student of mine. And Galen, very creative, very art-minded type of person where, maybe the academic aspect of things, was such a focus that, but arts was his true passion. And so he now has a glass blowing business in Columbus, and he is extremely talented. And he just sent me, one of his, because he knows that I collect pigs, and because I grew up on a pig farm, and he created this beautiful blown glass pig that he, did it based on a pig that I gave all my students when I was teaching. At the end of the year, I'd give them all a little stuffed pig. And so anyways, and
We
sign and
digress
stuff like
into
that. Yes.
the pigs, but
Yes,
that's
into
okay. We
pigs,
do that
yes.
often.
I bring that up because we don't want to forget about the arts. The arts is extremely important, and there are a lot of great fields and, that type of thing, that these careers that they can get into. And, to be able to integrate them into the engineering design challenges and into the STEAM lessons that we're doing, it's important for us to recognize the artistic aspect of things. And so, here's an example. We were talking about, when we just talked before we started on this broadcast, or, before we started recording today, about, we're talking about how humans are changing the landscape to modify, like, where streams go and erosion, deposition, and all of that stuff. And so, and we're having students engineer different ways to save homes and that type of thing. Well, one of the things that is very important is the artistic value and the artistic aspect of these things that we're engineering. And so if you're building, if you're going to construct a walls for the river bank not to get eroded away anymore, nobody just wants to look at a cement wall that is exposed and doesn't look like it belongs there. But there's an artistic value that people actually look at when they're engineering these things. And that creativity is so important. Look at the bridge that they just built in Kettering that, goes across one of the major roads that we have in Kettering. And they're now putting artwork integrated into that construction. And so there's a beautiful, and if you ever go up there and walk in a sunny day, there's like the lights that's shining through all these different shapes and stuff like that then is exposed on the road. And you can, it's really, really awesome. But the arts is being integrated more and more into the engineering and into the things that we're doing today, because we realize that that's important to people. Being aesthetically pleasing is very important. And so, and then like just being an artist with like glass blowing, I mean, I go into some of these different places or whatever, these places like glass blowing or, painting and all these art, and I'm just blown away. And there is so much you can interpret, and there's so much you can get out of looking at a piece of artwork or whatever. And I think it's very important for us to be able to do it. So how are we integrating that? Well, in these things we're doing an artistic aspect, like, okay, when you are engineering the structure, is it aesthetically pleasing, or would this fit in with the environment, or how can you make it that it just doesn't stand out so much, telephone towers, those are not cell phone towers, so windmills, that's another thing that is a big problem that people are having, it's like, how can we make windmills look more natural? And so we're trying to integrate these things in all of our lessons to, show the importance of the arts that, is in our world, in the real world. So, Galen, it's a great question. And I'm proud of you, Galen, for
Coach
all the
B,
work
that
you're
was
doing.
a great answer.
Well, I hope.
All right.
Well, I believe in it. I believe the arts is very important. So,
Absolutely.
awesome. And thank you. Great discussion. Lynn, thank you again for being
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.